God, we thank you for your deliverance that shall take place on tonight, God, how you should set people free from death. We give you all glory, honor, and praise.
A church in Norfolk, Virginia holds debt revivals. Individuals with large debts are selected, and then donations from parishioners pay off those debts. The church members then destroy their credit cards.
It's kind of hard to serve the Master and MasterCard. And so we've chosen to get rid of those cards to line our lives up with the Bible. Our debt liquidation program actually takes our members, pays off all of their debts except for their house and their cars.
What you're saying is, in a way, very unfashionable in a society that preaches the gospel of shopping, okay? The gospel of buying things.
Exactly. We are desperately hurting because we have established a level of success that says the more credit cards you have, the more you're worth. When really, in essence, that's not true. Our society has been really set up to keep us struggling and not give us relief. I believe that there's going to be economic fallout. And I'm telling my church, be prepared.
What goes up?
It has to come down.
To Chase and to Wachovia, Wells Fargo, Sally Mae, to MasterCard and Citibank, and also B of A. American Express and Visa, Morgan Stanley too. In debt we trust, so pay we must. We owe it all to you.
I pledge allegiance to the card of the United States of Credit, one nation under debt, with bankruptcies, late fees, and high interest for all. Credit. We can't live without it, and many of us can't live with it. In fact, right now, the United States of America and its people are kept alive by all the money we borrow. It's been called the democratization of credit, but for many, it leads to the democratization of dependency. Just look at all the ads on TV selling us more ways to take out loans. Behind our formal institutions, and more powerful than our politicians, is a hidden financial complex driving what the country's leading academic expert on the issue, Robert Manning, dubs our credit card nation.
We're seeing people who are dependent on credit. We're seeing them trying to struggle and make their minimum payments, where their ability to pursue the American dream is how much credit the bank is going to offer them.
Hey, it's only money. Other people's money, or what we call OPM. We're all living beyond our means. We're all living on credit. We're all living with debt, and it's growing every single day. The national savings rate is now 0. Americans spend more than we earn. It's never been like that before. And I have to deal with it also. I have mortgages. I have credit cards. I have all kinds of other loans. Meanwhile, my savings account is shrinking away. I started to make this film about other people's problems, and I realized it was about me too. I'm facing a credit squeeze that is as personal as it is political. The question, can we even live without credit cards?
At some point in your life, you need them. You need them to rent cars, you need them to rent hotel rooms. They provide a value service.
Look at me, man. Stop sending me credit card letters, man. I don't want any more credit cards. I already have bad credit.
To investigate this clandestine world masked by terms like proprietary information, we will tour this nation within a nation to meet some of the experts, advocates, and activists who can demystify a web of unchecked power that often determines where we live, how we live, and if we live at all.
It's about people being taken advantage of. It's about losing the American dream.
I couldn't bring myself to file bankruptcy because I wanted to pay everybody. I didn't want to just like say, oh, well, you're out of your money, you're beat.
We visited the Capitol in Washington, D.C. and found a congresswoman outraged by the power of industry lobbyists.
What you have here is an atrocity, a calamity, a collapse of the sympathy that American government should have for its people, because we've simply allowed the credit card giants to walk over us.
While the Atlanta-based former governor of Georgia says the whole country is being ripped off without knowing it.
Credit card debt has taken the greatest asset to a large extent that middle-class America had, working America, and that was the equity in their home. And so we have this really threat to the way we are as a people, and nobody seems to be concerned about it.
From coast to coast and shore to shining shore, in every mall and on every street, Americans are hurting without always being aware of why. This is not just a story about credit card mania, but what lurks behind it. What former Reagan advisor Kevin Phillips calls financialization, a powerful credit industrial complex deliberately engineered by excessive debt.
Let's spend a few minutes with a certain individual we'll call Mr. Money.
The idea of credit used to be so simple.
Hello, I'm Mr. Money. People can't seem to get along without me as cash or credit. What does credit mean to you?
Gosh, I don't know. Buy now and pay later, I guess.
Not bad. But there's a lot more to it than that.
Today's our first day of freshman orientation. Over 2,000 freshmen from all over the country, and in fact all over the world, are here. Some have a little bit more familiarity of managing their own personal finances than others. And I start off here with an antique savings bank. We used to train children to enjoy savings. Today we're training them to enjoy how to spend.
We're in the fight to save people's lives. People are getting into debt. I mean, every day that's just way beyond what they can handle. And when you meet someone that's 18, 19 years old and they're telling you how they're, $15,000, $20,000 in credit card debt, no one ever sat them down and explained, what it was like to try to get a job if your credit score was really messed up. I get the feeling a lot of times working with Dr. Manning that we're David and the credit card companies are Goliath. They have the mass media campaigns behind them, the lobbyists in Washington, D.C., and all we have is the truth.
Manning's lecture the next day packs them in, a sign of widespread alarm about so many kids leaving college with an average of $20,000 of debt.
Of this issue? Well, many of you probably have forgotten that the American Revolution was largely driven by the great American planners that were heavily in debt to European banks, and they had very onerous terms. And they recognized that they could not financially prosper under such outrageous financial demands. So part of the American Revolution was to break enslavement from financial debt.
We just constantly are getting bombarded from the credit card companies, and it's like, don't send it, I don't want it.
My daughter got one the other day, $5,000, and she's never had anything. So would you counsel for or against getting a credit card?
I think every student should get a credit card. But if their parents will not co-sign and they don't have an independent source of income, it should be capped at $500. And only if the student isn't delinquent in payments, then it would be raised $500 a year till graduation to a limit of $2,500.
One former student, Andrea Rodriguez, wishes she had listened.
I remember the first time when I went to a mall with a friend of mine, and there was a whole bunch of people outside just advertising credit cards for college students. So I applied for one. And of course, I didn't put the right income because I wanted a credit card. And a couple of weeks later, I received a credit card for a limit of $10,000. So I went out and I spent and I spent and I spent. At that time, I was not making any kind of money.
Soon she was in way over her head.
I got a lot of bills over $5,000. For one credit card, I owed $7,000, which was not the $10,000 credit card. That was another credit card. So I was like, I can't pay this. I was just going crazy. So I decided, my cousin actually is in with finance, and I decided to just go bankrupt at 21.
Gee, Mr. Money, do girls have to learn all this about credit too?
Well, Judy, women do most of the shopping when they get married, and very often spend most of the family income.
And now let's see just how shopping can be fun. Real fun.
This is a toy that's designed for children 3 years and up. The Barbie Register toy. And it actually gives you the exact sound of an acceptance of using a credit card when it processes it at the cash register. There's also Malibu Barbie, who comes with her own gold MasterCard. And there's Shopping Girl Barbie, where she has her own store to pick and choose with her credit card.
While Manning was warning parents and students of the dangers of getting suckered, local banks were setting up tables to sign up new customers right outside his lecture room.
Don't need anything for deposit. They're giving out free backpacks.
Okay. They get 0% on the purchases for 6 months, and then it goes to a standard interest rate.
On students, we usually give a line of somewhere between $300 and $500.
What's the interest rate, or how much does it cost to?
I don't know the interest rate offhand, sorry.
Manning knows he's fighting an uphill battle against a culture that thrives on consumption.
Just need your signature. Right here, please. The key for the banks is to get them dependent upon consumer credit, shape their attitudes towards savings, consumption, and debt, and to then multiply the number of financial products that they're buying from that particular bank. So the credit card will lead to the student loan, to the car loan, eventually to a home mortgage, and then maybe some insurance products and investment opportunities.
And it's free while they're a student.
Young people today that see credit as a social entitlement have no understanding of what it's going to entail to repay those loans back. Once they're used to living on borrowed money, then the banks realize that they'll be following that pattern possibly for the rest of their lives.
The pressure on students is intensifying. The cost of student loans is up thanks to the manipulation of interest rates. A lower fixed rate has been replaced by a higher variable rate. That means $5,800 more on average for students to pay off their debts.
I am so broke.
I was so broke.
So broke.
Have you had to roll change to pay for something recently? Yes, see, you know, yeah, right now.
No wonder campuses are welcoming presentations like this one by James Cunningham called Funny Money, teaching financial literacy to students. A student in Pennsylvania robbed a bank for cash to pay his debts. Other students have committed suicide.
What they find themselves in is in such a high level of debt that they can't possibly pursue the kinds of careers that they anticipated. This level of debt really is going to define their future, and is going to have a significant long-term impact on American society, where students can't go into the streets. They're not going to be able to demand social change because not only do they have a student loan debt to pay, but they've got credit card debts as well before they're even 22 years old.
I wish if I could go back and start over, I would have never touched credit cards. I tell my little brothers and sisters, whatever you do not get a credit card if you can help it. My name is Amelia Martin. I'm 27 years old. I'm from North Carolina. I guess about 10 years ago, I realized that I had accumulated a nice chunk, about $12,000 worth of credit card debt that I wanted to get rid of. I was 20 years old and I had a ton of debt already. And then I found these 0% cards, which made a lot of sense, right? That was like a way to beat the system, use the credit cards, and not pay interest. It seemed like a really great idea. These are all my 0% cards that I'm not using. This one, those are both Chase. This one, you know, I have debt spread across all of these cards, and I'm managing all of these cards. This one I just canceled, which was very exciting, but only because I made a payment late and they charged me a lot of money. You have to do a lot of research. They usually only last about a year. You have to pay everything exactly on time. You have to keep up with it. It's a lot of work. I have my day planner where I have, you know, things that I'm doing in my life, as well as when credit card payments are due and when credit card 0% cards lose their 0%. I don't know. It's a lot of work. I think in about 8 years I've managed to pay off $6,000, which is half of my debt, which means I guess what I have another 8 years. So it's going to take me 16 years to pay off $12,000. So I'm looking forward to the day when I don't have any debt. That'll be a good day.
Student debt is now a global problem. Will Hutton writes in London's Observer, the young have always lived for the moment, but now they face a grimmer future than their parents. Some young women are selling their eggs to pay off their credit card debts.
Who is a deadbeat in American society? Is it somebody who is least likely to pay their debts? Or is it somebody who's more likely to pay their debts?
In credit card speak, I'm considered a deadbeat because I like to pay my whole bill in full every month. They want me to be what they call a revolver, only pay the minimum, and then they can sock me with interest of up to 30%. Wow. Like many customers, sometimes I'm late by a day or two, and boom, that makes me eligible for late charges and penalties.
I don't understand, Mr. Money. How can you earn credit?
To earn credit, first you have to develop your character. You have to be trustworthy.
Today, trust has very little to do with it.
What happened to good word or trust? Well, you don't have that anymore. You got credit cards. Now if you have bad credit, you can't get a house. And if you don't have a house, you're homeless. And then they blame it on you because you're lazy. That doesn't make any sense.
Individual cardholders are up against a giant industry with a well-designed system for maximizing profits, often at the expense of consumers.
They wouldn't give it to you for free if it was free money. Never. Never.
Got free money, but you have to pay. Got free money, but you have to pay. From the sea to the shining sea. Got free money, but you have to pay. Signing up for bankruptcy. Got free money, but you have to pay. Everyone's a card head, blind like a crackhead. They send it in the mail, soon your house is for sale. MasterCard, Visa, pushing to squeeze. You're pre-approved by Amex for credit, Scamex.
More and more sectors of the American economy recognize that their financial success is based on the success of the credit card industry.
This is Wilmington, Delaware. There's a bank on every corner. Behind me, the headquarters of MBNA. It's a state known for its favorable business climate, for its low taxes, and for its politicians who will do the bidding of the credit card companies. MBNA is now owned by the Bank of America. Fewer and fewer banks, some say 10 in all, dominate 92% of the industry, supplying, get this, 1.5 billion cards worldwide held by 158 million card holders. That averages to 10 cards per person. The banks persuaded Congress to deregulate, leading to consolidation and higher prices. Pro-business court decisions allowed them to base operations in low-tax states like South Dakota and Delaware and end consumer protections against usury. You and I may not fully understand how the credit industry, the card companies, and big banks operate, but they understand us, their customers.
Everything here is very clearly thought out and premeditated, whether it's having conferences and think tank sessions about how to encourage people to accept more debt, to work with merchants, for example, to persuade merchants with empirical information that if your average customer pays in cash, that if they use a credit card, they'll buy 20-25% more.
3 big companies maintain vast databases on every American. They have more data than the CIA, says computer expert Daniel Gross.
The credit card system as a whole is a huge threat to our freedom. But the really great threat isn't so much these corporations as our nonchalance in the face of the power they have over us. It's our indifference, our negligence, our ignorance that gives them their power and that makes them dangerous to us.
Gross showed us how these companies present themselves.
This is the homepage of the Experian website. Notice how it has all the friendly colors and it's very inviting, happy mom, happy kid, very friendly, non-threatening, and that's the way they want you to feel about the multi-million-dollar business they have making money on your information.
We hear a lot about identity fraud and credit card scams against individuals, but not about fines and lawsuits against unethical practices by credit card companies, including deceptive advertising and improper fees. These credit bureau practices were riddled with abuses too. They've now simplified their products and the way they determine credit scores.
Credit score is a number that is calculated differently by each credit reporting agency using a proprietary formula.
Proprietary is another word for secret, which is how much of the industry operates. It decides on your credit worthiness and can often unilaterally change the agreement it has with you, even after you've signed it.
I don't bother reading most of the things I sign when I get them from my credit card company.
You're a lawyer.
Most people have difficulty understanding the amount of paper that your credit card company assaults you with. Multiple pages. The pages are at least 15 in number. The print is very small. And again, this is an example of drafting by a risk-minimizing lawyer.
What the big banks and credit card companies understand that most of us don't is that our society has changed fundamentally. Consumer credit drives our economy, but where is it driving us to? Everyone is scrambling to pay their bills. In many states, you can take out a loan using your car title as collateral. We followed these two guys into a title loan store in Delaware.
Well, we went in to get a title loan on Eric Penner's automobile here. The book value of this car is probably about $9,000.
For your vehicle, the most we'll be able to do, if we can have proof of income, is $1,100.
$1,100?
Mm-hmm.
And then what has to, then what's?
We have an interest 25%.
25%? It charges a 25% interest for a 30-day loan. So our interest for 30 days came to $296.86, plus charges a $65 processing fee. And they already automatically assumed that we wouldn't be able to pay it back in 30 days, so that only leads you to believe that it's a regular occurring situation. After 60 days, we will be charged an extra 25% on the loan, and then they charge you interest on the interest. $750 of interest. That's a ridiculous amount of money. You lose a car worth $9,000 for not paying back $1,850 in 60 days. That's the decision you have to make. And so many Americans find themselves in our current economy in a situation where they need to make these decisions and they need to borrow their money.
My name's Michelle Best. I'm 32. This is my husband, Marcel, and this is our command central. We have 2 kids, 1 job, and a lot of debt. Basically, we started out trying with the best of intentions, trying to keep our monthly bills low, and we got this American Express card. We had $15,000 in the bank. Both of us were working, and then...
I was completely against the credit card thing from the first.
Well, then you quickly...
Well, no. To me, like, just credit cards, you want something, you save the money, you buy it. Because you know what happens at the end here. You pay them extra money.
But then when you go from 2 kids... and no job and 1 job from 2 jobs and no kids, then you can't afford groceries. You can't afford things like shoes and clothes and things that you need. So I'm at home all the time. He's working, and I become in charge of the things we need. I come from an upper middle class family. I'm used to a certain level of income, and when the money dropped out, then that's where we went to credit cards. And we started out with this American Express card because he wanted to pay it off. And we lived for about a year completely in the black.
Always paid it off.
Paying it off.
Struggling sometimes.
In the last 4 years, this has jumped to $16,615, which is $615 over its credit limit, which means that every month we pay $234.41 in finance charges. Just on this one. We have 2 more. We pay for things like our computer on 18 months, same as cash. We use Christmas tips, whatever, to cover these. We make sure that we don't miss any payments because almost every single offer, if you miss 1 payment, then you get
Boom.
all of the interest lopped on.
Just waiting for you, just like floodgates, right? They just attack you right away, you know? Just
You
make
missed one.
Make one mistake, you know?
In 2005, the top 10 credit card companies spent over $2 billion on advertising and marketing.
These are the offers that we got this week. The DMV's in on it because now I can pay
Most
for...
of these don't even make it up the stairs because I ripped them up and throw them directly into the
To
trash, which they're
recycle.
getting very clever with. They make it so difficult to rip these things up right away.
They're
I
really
swear to God,
heavy.
I don't know what they do to them now, but you can't just rip them. So you got to go do
This is-
different ways.
Important information for Marcel's finances from the company who just gave me my last card. And also my dog at home, Guinness Best, he gets pre-approved for credit cards through my family's
Just
house.
wanted to see if it would happen.
Which- Your dog? My
it
dog.
happened. It happened.
Guinness Best, who's since died, but
He's very
still,
poor, no pun intended.
but he still does get pre-approved credit cards in the mail, even having been deceased for a year. My deceased yellow lab,
Yeah.
Guinness.
I asked Steve Barnett, who worked on advertising for Citibank's credit card division, about the way the companies market credit cards.
American Express discovered that a major problem that they had was that their credit card customer was getting older and older. They were not attracting younger people. And so they decided to make a card that would appeal to younger people, the Blue Card. And in fact, it was successful. Look at the MasterCard ads.
Program in the first, $4.
You'll see a MasterCard ad that shows a family going to a baseball game and paying for the hot dogs and the tickets and all this costs a certain amount of money and you can do it with MasterCard. But what is the real meaning of the evening? It's the family together and it is priceless. Now, think about that advertisement. This is an advertisement urging spending. And the trick in the advertisement, which is oh so clever, is to say the point of this all is it's priceless. It's really not concerned about money. It's concerned about you as an intact, wonderful, caring family. You as an intact, wonderful, caring family can go to some park and play softball with your kids too. You don't have to spend, $180 to go to a ball game.
Bankruptcy lawyer Charles Juntica.
People act on those commercials. Those commercials have real influence. They are done scientifically to get into your unconscious mind.
The priceless campaign, which you see in many, many of the MasterCard ads, is brilliant because what they're saying is this credit card, this is not a way to get you in debt. This is not a way to cause you to overspend. This is a way to reinforce your values, your deepest beliefs.
Their identity is based on their credit cards. Even the color of the plastic that they use now identifies them within a rank order of the credit card nation. Gold, silver, platinum, titanium. Everybody's identity now is what their transaction, whether it goes through, whether it's been accepted, whether it's been rejected.
The card itself says something about who you are. So that if now you're a senior executive, and you're taking out an American Express green card, there's a perceived disjunction between who you are and what that card is. And the credit card issuer says, wow, that's wonderful. I can issue a platinum card. Well, then the platinum card becomes too widespread. I can issue a black card.
The black card is the extraordinary, super elite card of American Express for people who charge approximately $300,000 a year.
Need a pricey watch or an exclusive hotel? American Express even publishes this glossy magazine just for wealthy cardholders. It's chock full of high-priced luxury products.
And you can literally have a helicopter and have a private shopping spree in Macy's with your personal shopper. And of course, you never have to check and see what the total bill is. It'll all be itemized for you for American Express.
P.S. The more fancy and elite a credit card is, the more money is made from that credit card.
After years of getting unwanted, unsolicited credit card solicitations in my mailbox at home, I come to the office and what happens? I'm being spammed to death with more solicitations in my inbox on email. Less than perfect credit will match you with the right lender, unsecured Gold MasterCard credit card. It just doesn't stop.
And where are the commercials that say, don't use credit cards? If you use a credit card, pay it off in 30 days, or else you'll pay outlandish interest. Where are those commercials? They don't exist.
Something like this? Making priceless commercials. Tens of millions. Making a film about credit card abuses. Tens of thousands. Getting hooked on credit cards. Overpriced. Creating awareness of the problem. Priceless. There are some things money can't buy. For everything else, there's 29% interest. The companies say that if people are misled, it's because they aren't paying attention. They distinguish between bad credit and good credit and call for consumer responsibility.
To help you make it. Your choice, your chase.
Today, there are more choices and more complexity about these loan products than ever before.
Doug Lebda founded LendingTree.com, a big internet-based lender.
And not only complexity in terms of the products, but also in terms of how to use them wisely. And all of this comes at a time when we as Americans are expected to take more financial and personal responsibility for our financial futures than did generations in the past.
Doug is right. Consumers are confused, but the companies thrive on that confusion too.
The
focus seems to be on individual responsibility. What is the responsibility of the industry here?
This is an incredibly complex world that we're living in with very, very complex products, and obviously the stakes are extremely high. I think it's important that consumers stay very informed in that process, and we as LendingTree, as well as the industry in general, I think can do a very good job in helping to educate and helping to inform and making sure that consumers get the right answers.
Bullshit. Did the banks say the same thing about mortgages? Did they say, we'll give anybody a mortgage? No, they have pretty strict restrictions and criteria by which they determine a mortgage.
But that's what they say.
Any institution that lends you money is obligated to define the conditions under which they're lending you money, which are commensurate with your ability to pay.
Isn't that their responsibility? Don't they have a responsibility?
Who's the they?
The banks.
Of course they do. Of course they do. We're doomed to shop till we drop. Two-thirds of our economy is based on consumption, which leads to a rather petrifying paradox. If we cut back on consumption, which obviously is good for the environment, it's good for a number of things, the U.S. economy collapses. In a sense, we've built an economy that needs rampant consumerism as a fuel to keep the engine going.
I know I'm not the only one dealing with this because I spend a lot of my time at the park. I call it the office because that's where I live basically and work. And all of the moms that I know talk about this. This is part of our coping mechanism is being able to complain to each other about how this is really affecting our lives. Tops on the conversation list is always our financial situation.
You pay the minimum every month. You don't get ahead on anything. You do shuffle. We have an American Express that you have to pay off every month, so that gets shifted. We just shifted like $2,000 onto a Discover card that has the most ridiculous interest. Mm-hmm. And so that's got like $5,000 on it now.
I just feel like everyone is kind of living above their means or struggling to get kind of what people could have years ago, like a house and a car.
We're so used to spending beyond what we actually have that the possibility that we could end up with nothing just doesn't seem real because when we don't have anything, we just charge it.
I mean, anything can happen if people are spending fake money, getting into debt up to their eyeballs. I mean, anything can happen.
It's always Christmas time for Visa. MasterCard gets presents every day. They're happy as can be when we discover 'neath our tree the finance charge that never goes away.
As of Christmas 2005, the national debt stood at $8,179,165,267,626.42. Break that down, and each American share comes to $27,439.48, and that's per person.
I'm going to be screwed. I don't like that at all.
This debt increases on average $2.83 billion per day.
The payments that we're making are the gift that keeps on taking and leaves us buried deeper every year.
As the national debt threatens to rise to $10 trillion, a new national debt clock is being built.
I know nothing about it.
I know absolutely nothing except for it's just making my family even more poor.
These figures boggle the mind and for most of us remain an abstraction. Few understand who is really responsible for this debt or what can be done about it.
I know the figure behind me is what each family or each person in the family owes. I don't even make that kind of money. That's crazy. I'll never be able to pay it off in my life, okay?
I don't know whether that's a graphic enough demonstration for a country that has the biggest deficit in its history, which, as I say, is bad for America, bad for the whole world.
It is as if there are no limits on how much money the country and its people can borrow. The irony, capitalist America is in debt to communist China to the tune of over $200 billion, the largest amount owed to any country.
They're never going to be repaid.
Economic historian Michael Hudson, who worked for the Chase Bank, says the debt will never be paid back.
Adam Smith said that no government had ever repaid its debts, and the same could be said of the private sector. The U.S. government does not intend to repay its trillion-dollar debt to foreign central banks, and even if it did intend to, there's no way in which it could. Most of the corporations now are avoiding paying their pension fund debts and their health care debts.
The government and big companies may not have to pay, but people like you and me do and will. And our own collective consumer debt is staggering, doubling in the last 10 years. According to the Federal Reserve, it is now over $2 trillion. This figure, representing credit card and car loan debt, excluding mortgages, translates into approximately $18,700 per U.S. household. Add in mortgages, and we're talking another $7 trillion. Borrowing now, paying later has become our way of life.
This is Shirley, and I'm calling from Card Service. We're in the office today to 10 p.m. Central Time, and it's urgent you return the call today.
Collecting debts today is a growing business, with an army of companies out to pressure you and then sue you when you don't pay off. Even when annoying, these calls seem to be an improvement over the days when a loan shark might break your kneecaps if you didn't pay up on time.
There'll be another envelope, same amount, tomorrow night.
A lawyer who prosecuted loan sharks knows how it works. Lou Cherico.
The loan is enforced by threat, by violence, but in almost no cases does the violence escalate to an actual killing of the victim. Because if the victim is killed, the loan is gone. So if you want to use the term, an administrative beating could be given, a beating enough to make the victim feel threatened, be harmed, but not sufficiently bad so that the victim can't function to get the money to pay the loan shark. That's the way the system works.
These loans are very expensive, but often the only funds small businesses can get.
The guy who has the bodega in the South Bronx, he's got to pay for his vegetables every day. He has a couple of bad weeks. Still, if he doesn't pay the vegetables, they don't deliver. He has nothing to sell. So he goes down the street to his local bar where his local loan shark hangs out, and he says, listen, I need $3,000 for a week. The guy says, I'm going to charge you $500. If you don't pay it back next week, it's $300 for every week after that. What choice does he have?
Today, like the mafia, most of the credit business has gone legit, thanks to laws influenced, if not shaped, by the power and money of big banks. It feels like a conspiracy.
The debt system seems to be creating a nation of scammers. Scammers on the part of banks and financial institutions, and scammers on the part of people who are trying to figure out ways to beat the system. True?
Yes, I agree. I agree they're both co-conspirators.
Tell me about this.
In doing this and making this money, they are in effect perpetuating this conspiracy because they're giving it to people that they know cannot pay the money back and cannot afford the usury.
In front of a bank, musicians play Shop Around, an old song with a new relevance.
Everybody seems to be in debt. Everybody seems to be behind in their bills.
I am myself.
Why is that, do you think?
Well, taxes are sky high. Everything's going up, and we're not making any more money in our work. I mean, it's not coinciding with the rate of things going up.
But the government says we've never had it better.
Government don't know what they're talking about.
What's that?
They don't live out in the street here.
To interview households who had incomes.
Tamara Drought of the Demos think tank says that while financial education can help some people, it's not the answer, because credit card debt, which has tripled since the 1990s, is a symptom of other changes in the economy that it's rarely connected to.
One, we're not going to educate our way out of this problem. Financial education is wonderful, and we need to do more of it, but what's driving a lot of the debt among these households is not a lack of budgeting or a lack of financial savvy. It's an economy that is increasingly stacked against them. Debt is a symptom of much larger economic and structural issues facing households. One, we've seen a decline in incomes or a stagnation of incomes, particularly in the lower income household range and also for middle income households. At the same time, costs have really skyrocketed. Healthcare, housing costs, the cost of sending a kid to college. And finally, we've got to look at public policy and what has happened. And what we see is a real retrenchment in terms of providing a safety net for households.
How did it happen? How did we go from being a nation that made things to a nation that buys things? How and why has the economy become reorganized around the means of consumption instead of the means of production? When did the mall replace the factory as America's economic engine?
People have difficulty realizing that the new economic conflict in our society is between creditors and debtors. There's still a tendency of many left-wingers to think in terms of the class war, and the war is between employers and employees. But the real economic war, where all the money is being made, is between creditors and debtors, because that's a free lunch.
Credit and debt are transforming our industrial economy into one based on financial services and service providers. As the gap between the haves and the have-nots deepens, having property is often considered the only way to build wealth.
The real estate economy is the centerpiece of the American economy. If anybody wonders why the American economy has survived the last half dozen years, it is because the centerpiece real estate economy has done so well.
And isn't credit really central to that, and debt?
Indeed. You do not purchase a high-priced home to live in, typically, without borrowing to buy.
But a 2006 HSBC report found that the biggest rise in housing values is taking place in what they call a bubble zone, with housing overvalued by as much as 40%, creating an illusion of trillions of dollars of inflated wealth. Yet for many Americans, reality is now spelled realty.
Mr. Money, my father's been making payments on our home for years.
That's called mortgage credit. And sometimes the payments may run for as long as 25 years.
Years ago, when suburban families paid off their loans, they had mortgage-burning parties. Remember Archie Bunkers?
Well, here it is, the bunker mortgage. The Declaration of Independence for us. From now on, we own a whole joint.
20 years old.
Today, most families will never pay off their mortgages because of constant refinancing.
As Napoleon said to Waterloo, this is this. Okay.
Remember when we called our homes our castles? That's a metaphor that goes back to the days of feudalism when the lords owned the land and the serfs did the work. And a historian of debt says that what went around then is coming back now.
The price of getting a home in America is to enter into a lifetime of debt servitude.
In a sense, have we become serfs? You know, are working people...
We've become mobile serfs in America. The families are tied to the debts, and no matter where they choose to live, they have serfdom with a free choice. And the free choice is just where you want to live and what bank you want to borrow the money from.
This is truly serfdom of the 21st century, where for many millions of people there is no hope in sight.
Is reaching into medieval times going too far? Not to Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who has been crusading on these issues.
Feudal lords reigned, and I believe that if we don't take an SOS moment, like the stop sign at the end of the block, we're going to, if you will, throw throngs, thousands, millions of Americans into a debt that they'll never reach out of. And we also will change the whole fabric of society. It will not be the haves and have-nots. It'll be the giants and the little people.
Historically, there were debtors' prisons. Now, for many, our homes have become our prisons. It's there we try to figure out how to make ends meet and keep a roof over our heads.
We don't lock people up anymore, but we certainly keep them trapped at the mercy of a very powerful lending industry. We've set up a system where people are cashing out equity in their homes, which for the majority of Americans is their primary source of wealth. They're using that to chase down better interest rates because they're being ripped off by a credit card industry. We've really left people with nowhere to turn for help.
Officials in the know take these parallels literally. If there's a truth-telling hero in Washington on this issue, it's this man, David Walker, our Comptroller General, who audits all federal budgets. He's been called Dr. Gloom for comparing the USA today to ancient Rome before its decline. In a 2005 report to Congress, this high-level official warns, continuing on this unsustainable path will gradually erode, if not suddenly damage our economy, our standard of living, and ultimately our national security. The financial analysts behind this new book on debt say an epic financial crisis is coming.
In the 1920s, one of the things that brought about the Depression, among others, was this exuberance, this foolishness in the investment of speculative stocks. Listen, I think the next great economic crisis in this nation is going to be brought about by the debt load and the high rates of interest that are charged from it. It is shocking to me that intelligent people, educated people, have not taken time to think about this. We cannot sustain over an extended period of time these high levels of debt, particularly at high rates of interest. Because what will happen is that whenever it comes to an end, and there is an end to the amount of credit. In other words, when it gets so leveraged, it will create an economic crisis so deep that it will threaten us as a nation.
Republicans worry too. Reagan conservative Bruce Bartlett charges that the Bush administration bankrupted America. He fears a market crash when the housing bubble bursts.
One of the scary things for me is that there's probably close to $1 trillion of approved credit that's sitting either in people's pockets or somewhere in their house. And what I mean by that is credit cards, no fee, that they have been issued that they're not using. Now, if the economy develops more difficulties and people have to take those cards out of their drawers or wherever they're keeping them, and they start to use them, that credit's already been approved. This is high risk, quite dangerous credit, but before somebody loses their home or has to take their kid out of school, they're going to burn through all the approved credit that exists. It is scary, and I think it could be the next bubble after the housing bubble.
You know someone. I mean, your coworker may look all sad and you think it's her boyfriend. It's really the fact that she owes $15,000 in credit card debt, another $20,000 in educational debt, and is getting calls all day and all night and can't sleep. But she does not share that with you.
More than 2 million Americans went bankrupt in 2005. Among them, Joe Sucher, a fellow film producer.
Bankruptcy was kind of like a foreign country I didn't want to visit. Sort of a judicial Baghdad. Frankly, I didn't even know what the term meant until one day I happened to turn on C-SPAN.
The word bankrupt as we know it today comes from the 16th century Italian bancarotta, which literally means broken bench, referred to in a legend that said when a money trader became insolvent, the bench or table on which he used in the market was literally broken. The Latin root of the word includes corrupt in the meaning.
I'm not particularly religious, but Jesus was a very peaceful man, right? He was, not a violent guy. The one time he was a little violent is he went into the temple, and Citibank, Chase Bank, MBNA were there changing money, and he took their tables and he threw them on the ground. Okay, we want to get biblical about this. Well, let's get biblical about this. They're making 54% net profit. That is evil. And they're making it off the poorest members of our society. That is evil.
After a 15-year marriage, 2 kids, I found myself in divorce hell. Legal briefs filed faster than speeding bullets. In the end, I had little in the way of savings and less in the way of income, but I did have credit cards. I used them to keep up with my bills, and the offers just kept coming. Low APR, put more muscle into your account, balance transfers. I needed to pay the mortgage, child support, home equity. I was over my head and I began missing payments.
Soon the offers turned to threats.
We're attempting to reach you because we need to speak to you. I received an email from my people saying that we need to get in contact with you, and hopefully you get this message, you can return my call.
There is a stigma to filing bankruptcy, and really the credit card industry counts on that stigma because most of our clients, they wait 3 to 6 years before they file. They only come when they can't take it anymore. They come in shaking. They haven't slept for months.
In this weird financial netherworld, I was discovering all sorts of seamy and slimy little profit niches. The attorneys, the debt collectors, the lingo and language all coded under ambiguous phrases like skip tracing, scrubbing. One company even advertised the profit potential offered by bankrupt individuals even if they were dead. So from research I had done, I knew that there were credit card giants like MBNA putting a lot of money into efforts to write legislation to revise the old bankruptcy bill. And I knew that there were Congress people like Chuck Grassley and Orrin Hatch, frankly, who were using a lot of scare tactics in order to get this bill passed.
Where the average person in America is paying $550 per person additional for goods and services because somebody else didn't pay their bills.
I tried avoiding the calls, but occasionally I'd get caught, and then I tried to reason with them. Some were sympathetic. They even sounded like human beings.
I hope you better things happen for you.
Well, as you know, a lot of people in this country right now are in the same position.
Oh, so many. You don't even know, sir. No, the rich get richer, and the middle class stay poor.
Now, the principal substantive argument we have heard here is that this bill goes too far and too fast. This really is just the same old song that we've heard now for 8 solid years as we've tried to put this bill together, and it has always had huge bipartisan support. That's bipartisan support, Democrat and Republican support.
$5 billion. $5 billion to the credit card companies. That's what this bill is all about. Where do you think it comes from? People who have gone into bankruptcy. Who are those people? They are the people that have the heart attacks. They are the men and women whose jobs have been outsourced. They're the mothers, the single moms who aren't getting paid back on alimony and child care support. Those are the people that are being hurt.
Kennedy won people's hearts, but the credit card industry won the vote. Bankruptcy reform passed, and President Bush quickly signed it into law. In 6 months, it would take effect.
President Bush signed a sweeping revision of bankruptcy rules today. The new law makes it harder to erase debts by declaring personal bankruptcy. At today's ceremony, the president said it will cut down on fraud. Opponents have said it helps creditors at the expense of the poor.
Do you think, in a worst-case scenario, could I lose the house?
Joe found that the new bankruptcy bill limited his own options.
Even in bankruptcy, they can still come after you. And when you think you've dealt with one pest, another pops up. Like that arcade game, Whack-A-Mole.
Joe is still fighting to keep up his morale and also keep his home, which showed up on foreclosure.com. He's not alone.
Having to declare bankruptcy is a very difficult situation.
Lorraine Bracco, who plays the therapist on the Sopranos TV show, went through a similar ordeal.
You know, bankruptcy is very expensive. The attorney fees are a fortune. I blamed myself for getting myself in this situation. We think every actress or movie star or every rich person has no problems. And we're just like everybody else.
If the bankruptcy laws become more difficult, you're going to find that the banks and the financial lenders all of a sudden will be saddled with assets, houses, whatever they can recover, that they really don't want, and they're going to have a lot of trouble disposing of. There has to be a reduction in the level of consumerism as people essentially go under in various ways. That triggers a vicious cycle of even more economic collapse. Now you have almost the perfect storm.
The victims of Hurricane Katrina found their finances devastated, along with their homes and communities. The so-called bankruptcy reform bill passed just weeks earlier specifically ruled out floods as grounds for bankruptcy.
3 years ago, you might have been a homeowner in New Orleans. Your husband might have been working. You might have been working. Today, you've lost everything. The bankruptcy bill would, in essence, force you out of the bankruptcy courts because 2 years ago, you're well-to-do middle-class people.
When the levees, they are leaking and the storm has hit you hard, help is on the way, my friend, they send you a credit card. You can live in a posh hotel room with Granny and Cousin Bud till you reach your credit limit, then you're back in the rain and mud. Give me a little more plastic.
Many people get behind on their credit cards when family emergencies like health crises, job loss, and divorces occur. Sometimes you can't anticipate what is the unimaginable. David Aguilar's business came crashing down with the World Trade Center. He had financed it on credit cards. As business slowed, he could no longer pay back. He was forced into bankruptcy.
The situation forced me to close the business. One day I realized and I couldn't do anything. I sent everybody home. I closed the business. I couldn't make any profit anymore. I tried to be responsible, even if to pay my rents, to take care for my kids, for my house, but I couldn't anymore because I feel a lot of pressure for my debts. My debts don't let me to sleep, don't let me to breathe or to live in peace.
My next question, Mr. Speaker, is whether or not this old stale bill respond
to the medical causes of bankruptcy that shows that because there's death in the family, illness or injury, people go who try to repay their bills and they fall into bankruptcy. We are at a point of going over the flat earth, falling off the edge. And if we don't gather our thoughts together to refocus this credit card system or the credit system of America, you will have a nation of debtors.
What I don't understand is why Congress has allowed this.
We're keeping the Congress's keys. They're like our employees. We're stacking the decks by writing the checks so we can do as we please. The bill on bankruptcy benefits our industry. It keeps you on track for paying us back as your top priority. It's so fantastic, fantastic. When you pay with plastic.
The halls of Congress, quiet, clean, official. Here's where the people's business supposedly gets done. How does money dictate policy in Washington?
Well, it's unfortunate, but obviously it buys media time. It also buys constant mail efforts. And also, obviously, you support candidates who will ultimately come to the United States Congress who may vote your way.
The largest contributors to political campaigns in America are the financial institutions. The second largest contributors are large real estate developers. That means that if you're running for office, you have to get elected by promising to support policies that are supported by the real estate sector and by the financial sector that lends to the real estate sector. So the politicians are pretty much bought.
And the credit card industry is the leading profit engine of the banking industry, generating pre-tax earnings of over $30 billion annually. Some members of Congress do worry about the debt problem. They know we are living on borrowed money and borrowed time.
This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. They are making more dollars on the excessive fees than they would at any time on the alleged goods that you are supposed to be buying. This is, of course, a calamity waiting for the Congress to wake up and provide some relief.
Some have stood up to the card companies in fiery hearings.
Since this bill was written, Mr. Speaker, Enron, WorldCom, Adelphia, United Airlines, LTV Steel, Kmart, Polaroid, Global Crossing have filed bankruptcy, and they did not have to use a means test. Does the
time
old
has
stale
expired.
bill deal with
Gentlelady
the
will
loan
suspend.
sharks? This is a travesty and should be defeated. Well, you know, when you spend upwards of $4 million, and I think that was a low number by the credit card companies, to get their bill, if you will, this was one of the more well-funded legislative initiatives that has probably come through the United States Congress.
It's much worse than even Congresswoman Jackson Lee realizes. This new book reports that the bank spent $36 million lobbying on the bankruptcy bill. Credit card companies added another $13 million. Accounting firms put in another $6 million. And business associations added almost $100 million. That's $154 million in all just to get one bill passed. Ohio's Bob Ney is among the leading Congress members backing industry-supported bills to undercut or preempt the power of states to regulate high-interest loans. His days in office may be limited because of his links to the scandal involving super lobbyist Jack Abramoff.
Most of the protections of debtors are now to be found in the library. You can go and you can find the old legislation and the old laws, but part of the idea of free markets means that you've taken away the protection of people.
Travis Plunkett is a veteran lobbyist for consumers, trying to counterbalance well-funded industry influence peddling.
This is the Hart Senate office building. A lot of the discussion, a lot of the wheeling and dealing isn't done on the floor of the Senate or the floor of the House. It's done in these office buildings or in restaurants nearby. And the major decisions regarding whether legislation is green-lighted or red-lighted that's all done behind the scenes.
Yeah, lobbying is to a large extent personal relationships.
Former Georgia Governor Roy Barnes encountered bipartisan lobbying to scuttle a predatory loan reform bill he signed. He said the credit card industry used personal pressure.
They hire very good lobbyists who have long-standing relationships. One of the lobbyists that was hired in some of the predatory lending was one of my best friends, and they knew that.
Most of the lobbyists work from Washington's K Street in the law firms and government affairs offices of big companies. Some serve the 10 banks that control the credit card industry and do its bidding on Capitol Hill. The congressional committees that regulate the industry are usually dominated by members from the states where the credit card companies and other banks operate.
It's not a partisan issue. Both sides, Democrats and Republicans, have fallen into this protection of an industry that I don't really believe needs protection.
That's bipartisan support, Democrat and Republican support.
The people who listened to the credit card companies, ignored consumer organizations and women's groups and civil rights groups and unions, and passed a very harsh bankruptcy law, came from both parties, both Republican and Democrat. So it is not a partisan issue.
Well, what we've seen with this kind of financialization of the American economy, where the democratic system and so many democratic institutions have been co-opted and literally bought by the financial service industry, is that we're seeing a big backlash from the American people.
Up against the industry's economic clout and political access, you have a handful of consumer advocates, like the Center for Responsible Lending's Josh Nasser.
For every time that I'm able to meet with a member of Congress, most times that member of Congress has met with tons of industry people already.
Most people think most policies are decided inside the Congress,
Right.
Like you see on C-SPAN. But what really goes on up here in terms of, these issues we're discussing?
Well, the truth is that a lot of decisions that are made here by the members of Congress and a lot of the conversations that the lobbyists have with the members of Congress are made in clubs like here, which is the actual Republican Club, Capitol Hill Club over here. And there are tons of fundraisers every night, and this is where the lobbyists really get one-on-one time with the members of Congress. And a lot of decisions are made, a lot of deals are cut in these buildings right here, not in the Capitol.
When the lobbyists come in, what do they bring with them?
Well, they have to make a contribution to attend. A lot of times it's, $500 to $1,000 per individual, per event.
Citizen activists like members of ACORN representing poor people also try to get their voices heard.
You know, when I was 16 or 55, I earned $5 an hour in a factory. But we can't afford to live like this.
Right. Well, it's better than nothing.
You know what? You should have never, because it is nothing. It is nothing. It is nothing. No, the civil conversation is done.
Who are you up against? You are up against powerful forces, a big industry, big budgets, big lobbyists. They go to meetings. Guy was telling me he goes to a meeting with guys giving out checks with thousands of dollars.
When they have committee hearings, they'll have one panel for the banking industry and the brokers and so forth. Then they'll have another panel for the consumers. We'll fly someone in from Minnesota or something, a person who has been victimized by predatory lending, to tell their story. I mean, this is heart-wrenching, but by then the bankers are gone, the brokers are gone, and members of Congress, some of those are filtered out, it might be after lunch. They don't give a darn. Really, it's all about money.
If you can't maintain a certain amount, no bank is gonna let you have a checking account. So when you gotta cash a check cause your kids need to eat, there's a check cashing place about a block up the street. When the money's tight, you don't have to wait. There's a 500% interest rate that you keep rolling over on that payday loan. And if you can't afford the freezer, you can rent to own. You gotta make those payments, bro, you can't miss one. You can buy it 3 times over by the time that you're done. If you do miss a payment, they will repossess. And when your ice cream melts, it's gonna make a mess. Cause they're predators. They keep devouring more and more. They're predators. They're getting richer by preying on the poor.
When you get a check and you don't have a bank,
to get the money immediately. You can't wait. It's not like you get paid on Fridays, you getting cash, and you go take care of your business. You're getting a check. What am I gonna do with this? I don't go to the bank because I don't have an account there. They give me the runaround about this, that, and the other. Gotta have $300 in a bank to start an account and all this. So I go to the check cashing spot. That's the scam. That's how they catch people.
Check cashing stores and tax rebate joints are everywhere in poor neighborhoods. Traditional banks are not.
We're in the center of Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, which is one of the largest black communities in this country. You have signs all over the neighborhood that say, no credit, bad credit, no problem, come to us. Need fast cash, come to us.
Sarah Ludwig works with a group that sees the credit crisis as an issue of economic justice.
If you look at this map, for example, what you see for New York City is that this chain Rent-A-Center, which is a rent-to-own store, has located all of its stores in predominantly low-income communities of color.
You want to buy a 19-inch TV? You can get one at a mall for $195. Renting to own it here will eventually cost you over $700, over 78 installments with an interest rate of 238%.
What happened about 20 years ago is that bankers said they made a anthropological discovery, a breakthrough. They found out that the poor are honest. Almost the only people who believe that they should repay their debts are the poor people. And in fact, the less money you have, the more you believe that the debts should be paid. What this means is that even though the poorer you are, the higher the interest rate you pay, the poorer you are, the greater the likelihood the bank has that you're going to repay the debt.
We're in front of one of the largest tax prep chains in the country, H&R Block, which offers instant money to people. Come in and get your taxes done, and we'll front you your refund and any earned income tax credits you're expected to get right away. You'll get it in 1 to 3 days from us.
What's the interest?
The interest rate is anywhere between 40 and 700% annual percentage rate, because these are very short-term loans that are being made by some of the largest banks in the world and siphon out $1.6 billion a year for tax prep and loans. H&R Block, Jackson Hewitt, Liberty Tax, and all these independent tax preparers are basically functioning as brokers for these very large banks. And what you really should see behind this storefront looming are some of the largest financial institutions in the world, particularly HSBC.
Banks like HSBC don't like to answer tough questions. They refuse to talk to us on camera, even after one spokesman confirmed that the bank does finance rapid tax refund loans. He claimed the loans are not expensive and help consumers. Members of ACORN say that neighborhoods in Washington, D.C., a few miles from the Congress, are being devastated by mortgage scammers who engineer the gentrification of poor neighborhoods through what's called subprime lending. Poor people end up paying higher interest. The real estate industry calls subprime their hottest segment.
It's not about race and so forth anymore. It's more of a class separation in this country. And the very, very wealthy continue to thrive and survive. The rest of us are just trying to scratch and make it.
Josh Zinner and his small team of legal aid lawyers is barely coping.
Here in New York City, we have a foreclosure prevention hotline, and we get calls from all over the city from low and moderate income homeowners who are at risk of foreclosure, particularly from predatory lending. And we're just getting deluged these days. Foreclosure rates are very high.
Welcome to Bushwick in Brooklyn, an area the New York Times calls the hot new neighborhood, in a real estate story that does not describe local suffering. Rick Echevarria's community organization is fighting to help people stay in their homes.
Debt is profitable. One of the questions that we're often asked is, well, Rick, how is it that a bank would lend $600,000 or $800,000 on a property that's only worth $300,000 or $400,000? I mean, what are they going to do if the mortgage borrower doesn't pay the mortgage? And we explained to them the first lender is selling the debt and being completely reimbursed. So there's no risk for them.
They're selling these mortgages into the secondary market through Wall Street. So what they're doing is they're having these mortgages, basically selling hundreds of millions of dollars worth of these mortgages into these securitization trusts.
I will guarantee you that if you own a house or an apartment, that the bank that issued you your mortgage is not the bank that holds your mortgage today.
The severity of the problem of home mortgage lending in a predatory way may be quantified in the following terms. You are talking in recent years of a problem that every year transfers hundreds of billions of dollars.
Hundreds of billions?
Hundreds of billions of dollars.
You said billions.
I said billions, not millions, from the pockets of the poor to people who are far better positioned than their so-called victims.
That's what happened to the Fayez family. They trusted one of these scammers who demanded their house deed when they took out a loan. The family was soon dispossessed and out on the street. Their ordeal was so shocking that it made the newspapers.
When the marshal came, my children was having lunch on a Wednesday, the coldest day in January, and said, you have 10 minutes to leave. My children have suffered nightmares. My son Daniel would hide under the seat of the car when he will see a police officer. You know, they still remember what they were having for lunch, what they had in the microwave that was left there. They could not even pack their things. Here I am, a hard-working mother of 4 at the time, not wanting to go on welfare. I'm sure they will pay a rent for us and give us food, but that's not our ambition. Wanting to keep our house as an inheritance for our children, it's not something wrong. And we weren't well educated as to how swift and conniving these people are.
That's what happened to Mary Pashkovitz. She teared up as she told me her story in front of the home she grew up in South Philadelphia. She lost it to a fraudulent home improvement scam.
It was very hard. I lost my father in this house. It upsets me. It upsets me immensely. I haven't been back around here for a while.
This is your place still in your heart.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. My father died in this house, and he never wanted me to lose it. And I feel like I failed him too.
The military, including soldiers just back from Iraq, are also being targeted. The New York Daily News reports more than 100,000 U.S. troops have been saddled with long-term debt in return for short-term cash from payday loan stores, charging interest rates that would make the mob blush. Poorly paid soldiers put up their paychecks as collateral to these high-interest short-term loans.
Here in the Norfolk region is the largest naval station in the world. Plus you have the largest naval amphibious base in the world. And 3 years ago, there were 3 payday lenders in the area. As of yesterday, there are now 26.
I know some guys that keep using it and using it and using it. And they don't know how to stop because it's money right there in their hand, right quick like.
The money's more accessible in this area, so everybody just almost attacks one specific area until it dwindles, and then they just move to the next one.
Counselors here at a Norfolk Navy base told us what they're confronting.
In this office, we have a completely anonymous survey. It asks very specific questions about have you used a payday lender, and it goes on from there. We had 164 respondents recently, and the first question was, did you have to renew your loan to take out another one to pay the first one back? And out of that 164, 111 said yes, they did have to do that. The next question is, is, if so, how many times did you have to do that? And they range from, we only did it once, 13 people only did it once, to one person who had to roll over that loan 40 to 60 times. One person said, I hopefully will never do a payday loan again. One person said I was living off payday loans. One person said I had to feed my family, I had no choice. One person said it took almost a year to get out from under one loan. It was a trap. They are designed to force dependence.
In the future of our country, waves of destructive forces will continue to batter against our foundation. When any force weakens the interlocked blocks of our political and economic freedoms, as good citizens, we must be quick to use the tools our Constitution gives us.
We have people come into our office look like this all the time. They're going, hey, dude, can you get me out? There's 90% of the marriages end on money problems.
Conservatives like Nashville radio host Dave Ramsey encourage cutting up your credit cards.
These things are gone forever. We're going to have a vasectomy. We're going to discover freedom, baby. That's right. We're going to get rid of the titanium card, right? Oh, out of here, baby. Bank of America. Yeah, I got an American flag in my car. That'll do me just fine. Thank you very much. Here's a platinum card. Capital One. Let's make it into 2. What do you think? Right? This has been going on long enough.
Evil triumphs when good men do nothing. We can stop this conspiracy by disregarding the advertising, disregarding the hype, and disregarding the easy way out to take money that when you borrow it, you know in your heart, you know you can't pay that money back.
People make mistakes. We all make mistakes. We're only human. The second chance comes when the judge turns around and says, Miss Bracco, you have used this system in the right way. Congratulations. I hope for you a brighter future.
In Atlanta and other communities, there are public access TV shows focused on educating consumers.
We have in America a system of financial apartheid.
Legal aid lawyer Bill Brennan uses his show to denounce ripoffs and urge communities to fight back.
If they send you a piece of mail, throw it in the trash. If they knock on your door, call the police because they'll steal from you. They do things with a pen and a paper, what we would not allow to be done out here on the street with a gun.
In Brooklyn, an expanded credit union serves the community with free tax preparation as an alternative to predatory lenders.
It's a great alternative. We're a not-for-profit organization. We're cooperatively organized. We make just enough to cover our expenses, provide the service, and we return the extra to our members. We're not here to make money off of our members. We're here to serve them.
What we need is good, firm, but balanced regulation and legislation. We can't get it in Congress.
It is very clear that the hope for the future is help at the state level with state legislatures and state attorney generals and nonprofit and community groups that are organizing and entering together with consumer organizations and demanding a fair and more equitable society where the cost of credit is based on what the true cost really is.
All the problems that we're seeing are just ripe for a really large organizing effort, and that it really, cries out for people to band together because this is affecting so many of us, and it just needs to be identified, I think, as an issue that many of us can rally around. It's an economic justice issue, it's a civil rights issue, and it's a question of just basic fundamental fairness.
It's really frustrating to see people's lives being destroyed because these guys are seeking the buck. They're chasing revenue, they're chasing profit. It's net income to them. But to us, it's people's lives that are at stake, and so that's the fight that we're in here.
I think that this issue can be a catalyst of bringing folks together behind a single idea, and that is that these abuses have to be changed and they have to be stopped. If I were thinking about running for president, and there'll be somebody that come along, and I'm not. I've gone straight. If I were thinking about running for president, I would make this a national issue. And you know why? Because everybody would understand exactly what you're talking about.
My tour of our credit card nation was ending. How depressing to find so many people suffering and to realize that I'm part of the problem. I'm back with my calculator, my bills, trying to make ends meet. With billions at stake, with both political parties implicated, it's like a turnstile that you get into, but you never get out of. What can break through and create a sense of national outrage about credit scams and predatory practices? Can this problem become a national issue in a country that seems to believe in debt we trust?
Some household would be freed from the burden of debt.
Yes.
Many believe, like the parishioners of Norfolk's Mount Carmel Baptist Church, in the rhetoric of the Bush administration, that there may be a faith-based solution, an answer from on high. But these parishioners also know that the good Lord helps those who help themselves and also works in mysterious ways. Some believe that it was divine intervention that caused the recent tragic helicopter accident in the skies over New York. It elicited seething anger, however insensitive, towards powerful credit card companies.
An MBNA corporate helicopter down at about 4:40 p.m. today. All were rescued from the water by emergency services.
6 top credit card executives from MBNA, then the largest card company in the country, nearly drowned when their company chopper plunged into the East River near the United Nations.
MBNA is the most notorious loan shark credit company in the country. And when their helicopter crashed into the East River with half a dozen senior executives, I mean, it was hard for people like me who've seen the suffering those guys have created not to think this was some sort of biblical retribution.
Wilmington, Delaware, that's where the helicopter was heading.
I don't wish that on people, but when you've seen the suffering I've had over the last 20 years, part of me felt sorry, but part of me had to feel that maybe there is a God.
Back in the South, like in Norfolk, Virginia, where the civil rights movement is remembered, a new cry for liberation is being heard.
I see this as a movement towards liberation. And that's all the civil rights was about, liberating people.
What he's teaching us is being free from the enemy, which is debt.
We have a president who says he believes in faith-based solutions.
Yeah, I heard.
Now, you have one, but
Exactly.
They're not listening in Washington, are they?
No, they aren't. They aren't. And so it has to start on this local level, and people like you and other people who are concerned about our problem keep voicing it, then the people, I believe, will catch on. Sammy is out of debt.
Pay cash. Get rid of your credit cards. Cut them up.
Do people think you were nuts?
Sure they did.
Your family?
But look who's laughing now. I'm out of debt.
In the end, it will take a coming together of all segments of the American people, poor and middle class, white and black, left and right, to press the politicians and the financial institutions for liberation from debt before the bubble bursts.
In debt, we do trust. Hell yeah.
In debt we trust, you better not trust long.
The U.S. government is in the red, big time. It's scary. The run-up in debt has economists, Wall Street analysts, academics, and Congress nearly at a state of nervous breakdown. In economic terms, we have never experienced the impact and danger of such a debt load before. No markers, no reference points. It's terra incognita.
You got free money, but you have to pay. You got free money, but you have to pay.
Oh, gee, our time's up already, Mr. Money.
To benefit from the many credit services available throughout the country, every consumer should understand the wise use of credit.
Free money, you have to pay.